Today in the episode: energy truce. Will Russia abide? Formula for failure. Lukoil demands budget payouts amidst sharp decline in Russian crude prices. The golden shift. Russia forced to sell gold to China as budget deficit hits critical levels. There were no direct agreements between Ukraine and Russia regarding the cessation of strikes against energy facilities, stated President Zelensky. Meanwhile, Putin's press secretary Peskov has confirmed an energy truce till 1st of February at Trump's request. More than 450 apartment buildings in Kyiv remain without heating. The situation is also difficult in Kharkiv. The Ukrainian president confirms that the issue of a so-called energy truce was discussed during trilateral meetings in Abu Dhabi. Volodymyr Zelensky thanked the United States for the initiative.
Ukraine is ready for meetings, Ukraine is ready for decisions, and we expect that our partners will be able to be as effective as possible in Europe, in America, and everywhere, exactly as is necessary for a lasting peace. We will use all opportunities to achieve peace and guarantee security. I am grateful to the American side for their efforts to stop the strikes on our energy sector during this time, and we hope that America will succeed in ensuring this. Today, there is a statement from the President of the United States. The situation tonight and in these coming days, the real situation at our energy facilities and in our cities, will demonstrate this.
Trump stated that Putin had agreed to halt strikes on Kyiv for 1 week due to the freezing weather. This was announced by United States President Donald Trump while commenting on the progress of negotiations in Abu Dhabi. According to him, the issue of a so-called energy truce was among the topics discussed in the United Arab Emirates. He also raised this matter during his most recent personal conversation with Putin.
I told that Russia is not doing any shooting for a period of time during this horrendously cold weather.
Because of you.
So we asked President Putin if they could stop the shooting for a week. They're being hit with proportionately the kind of cold that we're being hit. It's much colder in Ukraine to start off with, but it's really cold now. And he agreed to do that. We appreciated that very much. It's a nasty war. It's a nasty, nasty war.
Strike moratorium on Ukraine could benefit Russia, says the Institute for the Study of War. Russian forces will be able to amass drone and missile stockpiles that it can use to launch large, combined strikes in the future. ISW noted that the Kremlin rejected past calls by Ukraine and the United States for a longer or permanent moratorium on strikes against civilian infrastructure. Significant progress is being achieved in the matter of ending Russia's war against Ukraine. Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, stated that the negotiations are proceeding in a positive manner, and that he expects even more progress during the next round on February 1st.
So we had 5 Russian generals last Sunday in Abu Dhabi with Jared and Dan Driscoll, and we think we made a lot of progress. The talks will continue in about a week, but lots of good things happening between the counterparties discussing the land deal.
They're talking together.
We have a security protocol agreement that's largely finished, a prosperity agreement that's largely finished, and I think the people of Ukraine are now hopeful and expectant that we're going to deliver a peace deal sometime soon.
Lavrov stated that a long-term ceasefire of 60 days proposed by Zelensky is unacceptable to Russia, and Kremlin does not know what security guarantees were agreed upon between the U.S. and Ukraine. This was stated by the Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov. The day before, during a hearing in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee of the U.S. Congress, Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated that a joint agreement had been reached regarding the guarantees, which would include the deployment of a small contingent of European troops, as well as support from the U.S. However, Lavrov refuted this.
I heard that at least U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, suddenly invited to the Senate, said the issue of security guarantees had been resolved. We don't know what guarantees they agreed on.
Russia's Lukoil has turned to the government for assistance following a sharp decline in Russian oil prices. The company is requesting the Ministry of Energy to adjust tax regulations, specifically seeking payments from the federal budget. Lukoil is pushing for a change to the formula of the damping mechanism, a system to stabilize domestic gasoline prices. This plea comes as U.S. sanctions continue to take a heavy toll. By the end of the first half of 2025, Lukoil's profit plummeted by half. The situation is even more dire for Rosneft, the country's leader in production and exports. The company reported that its profit for the period of last January to September crashed threefold. The Russian oil giant Lukoil has reached an agreement to sell its international assets to the American investment fund Carlyle. According to a statement from Lukoil's press service, the deal excludes assets in Kazakhstan, which will remain under Russian ownership and continue operations under their current licenses. This move is seen as a significant step in the restructuring of Russian energy holdings amidst the complex landscape of international sanctions. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha has called on the EU to introduce tough sanctions against Russia. On the social network X, he wrote that it is necessary to increase pressure on the Russian shadow fleet and the oil companies Lukoil and Rosneft.
I stressed once again that there is no alternative to increasing pressure on Russia by blocking its shadow fleet, by adopting a strong 20th package of sanctions, following the American example, imposing sanctions against Lukoil and Rosneft. I urged our partners to make 2026 the decisive year for Ukraine's European integration and the EU enlargement. It will bring peace closer, make Europe more secure, competitive, and strategically stronger. Andriy Sybiha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine on X.
Producers are continuing to increase discounts for India in an effort to offload shipments that refineries have begun to reject due to sanctions from U.S. President Donald Trump's administration. That is according to a report by the Financial Times. Data indicates that discounts on Russian crude have surpassed $25 per barrel. In some cases, for specific shipments, the price cuts have reached nearly $40 per barrel, as Moscow struggles to maintain its market share under heightened diplomatic and economic pressure. Russia has significantly increased its gold exports to China, effectively shifting to a forced sell-off of reserves amid financial pressure. This is reported by the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine. Over the past year, Russia delivered more than 25 tons of gold to China, 9 times more than a year before. The Russian treasury critically lacks funds. More in the next story for you.
Russia is increasing gold sales to China. Last year, Moscow exported more than 25 tons of precious metals worth $3.3 billion, according to reports from Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service. For comparison, in 2024, the Kremlin sold 9 times less. Russia's reserves now hold 160 tons of gold, 3.5 times less than at the beginning of 2022.
Supplies were uneven and situational in nature. The main volumes occurred in 2 periods, February to March and October to December, indicating an unstable export schedule. The peak load was recorded in December, when Russia shipped 10 tons of gold worth $1.35 billion, which is more than 40% of the annual volume. Such concentration at year-end indicates the use of gold as an instrument for urgent fundraising. Exports were carried out mainly in the form of gold bars, which simplifies the rapid monetization of assets. From a publication by Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine.
Lack of money is the main problem of the Russian economy. The authorities adopted a 2026 budget of 44 trillion rubles, with 1/3 planned to be spent on the war against Ukraine. They plan to earn money by selling oil at $59 per barrel. However, the real price of Russian oil is just over $40 per barrel. Taking into account discounts for importers, Moscow is selling it practically at cost. Experts note, the energy sector is becoming loss-making. One of the largest oil companies of the aggressor country, Lukoil, is requesting budget assistance, reports the Moscow Times.
Lukoil is asking to change the damper mechanism formula introduced in 2018 to stabilize gasoline prices. Currently, under the damper, the state pays oil companies from the treasury if domestic fuel prices remain below global ones. If the situation is reversed, companies pay an additional tax. Due to discounts on Russian oil exceeding $20 per barrel, oil companies will have to pay 13 billion rubles into the budget under the damper for December. Lukoil proposes to cap the discount taken into account for taxation at $10 to $15 per barrel so that oil companies pay nothing and, on the contrary, can receive budget funds. From a publication by the Moscow Times.
Having lost its main source of profit, Russian authorities have begun nationalizing private property and selling it at auctions. Thus, in June 2025, the Moscow Region Arbitration Court seized the assets of Moscow's Domodedovo Airport in favor of the state following a claim by the Prosecutor General's office. The former owner, who holds foreign citizenship, was accused of using Domodedovo in violation of the law and sending profits abroad. On 29 January, the nationalized airport was sold at auction.
The new owner of the Domodedovo Group assets following the auction was limited liability company Perspectiva, a subsidiary of Sheremetyevo International Airport. Bidding started at a price of 132,300,000,000 rubles, with a step of 10% down to a minimum of 66,100,000,000 rubles. In the end, the price fell by half, that is, to the minimum threshold, from a publication in Russian media.
The sale of Domodedovo creates a dangerous precedent, analysts note. The very fact of reviewing privatization in Russia creates danger for all businessmen and oligarchs. Most likely, the authorities will not frequently resort to nationalizing such large enterprises.
I understand that privatization in Russia itself is quite controversial, so any asset that was privatized can, in principle, be quite easily taken away by explaining that it is unclear how, or rather, not in the most legal way, it ended up with its owner. In general, we take it back. But if we cancel all privatization throughout Russia's history after the collapse of the Soviet Union, it will be chaos. It will be yet another loss of trust.
The authorities are also systematically raising taxes, excise duties, and fines, extracting money from the population. Entrepreneurs feel this pressure most strongly. According to Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, 44% of retailers in 2026 expect a decline in profit and profitability, while only 29% expect sales growth, the lowest figure in a decade. Reported by Andriy Dmitrenko, UATV News.
That's all for today's News Digest. Stay informed, stay critical. Like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. See you next time.